You know what? I'm about to say something that's gonna make half of you furious, and the other half will be smashing that share button so hard your screen might crack. Paul Heyman, the so-called wise man, the advocate, the mastermind behind Roman Reigns' historic title reign, just got exposed. And not by CM Punk, not by Cody Rhodes, not even by The Rock. No, no, no. He got decimated by a 26-year-old monster who just proved that talk is cheap, wisdom means nothing, and not the old guard, they're terrified of what's coming from them. Bron Breakker didn't just attack Paul Heyman. He didn't just send a message. He surgically dismantled everything the Bloodline represents, and if you think this was random, you haven't been paying attention. This is Wrestle Scope, and today we're diving deep into the most brutal display of dominance we've seen in years, and why Paul Heyman's reaction tells us everything about WWE's future. But before we get into it, let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw real fear in Paul Heyman's eyes? Not the scripted shock, not the theatrical gasps he's perfected over 3 decades. I'm talking about genuine, visceral, soul-crushing terror. The kind of fear that makes a man who stood across from Brock Lesnar, faced down Undertaker, and manipulated WWE's most dangerous competitors look like a child realizing he's in way over his head. That's what we witnessed. And here's what's making the WWE universe explode right now. Some of you are calling Bron Breakker reckless. Some are saying he crossed a line by going after a 59-year-old non-wrestler. Some of you are even demanding he be suspended or fired. And to those people, I say this. Where was this energy when Paul Heyman spent years manipulating, scheming, and sending his clients to end careers? Where was this moral outrage when he orchestrated attack after attack, when he celebrated as Roman Reigns brutalized legends and newcomers alike? You can't build an empire on violence, manipulation, and intimidation, and then cry victim when that same violence comes knocking at your door. Paul Heyman isn't the victim here. He's the architect of his own destruction. And Bron Breakker, he's the demolition crew. Comment right now. Do you think Bron went too far, or did Paul Heyman get exactly what he deserved? Because this debate is tearing the wrestling world apart, and I want to know where you stand. Let's rewind and talk about how we got here, because this didn't happen in a vacuum. This has been brewing since the moment Bron Breakker stepped foot on the main roster. And if you've been watching WWE with your eyes open, you saw this collision coming from a mile away. Bron Breakker is a genetic freak, and I mean that literally. He's the son of Rick Steiner, nephew of Scott Steiner, and he carries the legacy of one of wrestling's most dominant families in his DNA. But here's the thing that separates Bron from every other second or third generation wrestler we've seen. He doesn't trade on his name. He doesn't need nostalgia pops or family reunions. He's building his own legacy through pure, unfiltered violence. Since his call-up, Bron has been on an absolute tear. He's not tutting 20-minute promos. He's not playing political games backstage. He's not begging for opportunities on social media. He shows up, destroys whoever WWE puts in front of him, and moves on to the next victim. It's simple, it's effective, it's terrifying if you're standing in his way. But here's where Paul Heyman made his critical mistake. See, Paul Heyman has spent his entire career reading people. He's a master psychologist, a student of human nature, and he knows how to push buttons to get the reaction he wants. But with Bron Breakker, Paul miscalculated badly. He looked at this young lion and thought he could play the same games he's played for 30 years. He thought he could manipulate him, control him, or at the very least use him as a pawn in whatever grand bloodline scheme he's cooking up. Paul Heyman saw Bron Breakker and thought tool. Bron Breakker saw Paul Heyman and thought obstacle. And here's the beautiful irony that has me absolutely geeking out as a wrestling fan. Paul Heyman, the man who created the modern monster heel in Brock Lesnar, the man who taught WWE what an unstoppable force looks like, just got run over by the next evolution of that very concept. Bron Breakker is what you get when you take Brock Lesnar's raw power, add Kurt Angle's intensity, inject Goldberg's explosive offense, and remove any semblance of fear or restraint. He's a video game character brought to life, and Paul Heyman just realized he doesn't have the cheat codes anymore. Now let's talk about that moment, the moment that has social media in flames right now. Picture this, Paul Heyman doing what Paul Heyman does best, standing in the ring with a microphone, spinning his web of words, probably setting up yet another Bloodline storyline, feeling completely secure in his role as the untouchable wise man. The crowd's eating it up, he's in his element, and then, boom, Bron Breakker's music hits, and immediately you could see it. That microsecond where Paul Heyman's face went from smug confidence to absolute dread. Because unlike every other WWE superstar who's interrupted Paul over the years, Bron Breakker didn't walk to the ring. He didn't pose on the ramp. He didn't waste time with theatrics. He sprinted to that ring like a missile locked on target, slid under the bottom rope, and before Paul Heyman could even drop the microphone, the assault began. And this wasn't a wrestling beatdown. This wasn't a worked shoot that looked cool for the cameras. This was personal. This was violent. This was a 6'1", 230-pound wrecking ball with bad intentions, making a statement that echoed through every locker room from Raw to SmackDown to NXT. The spear? Devastating. Paul Heyman folded like a lawn chair, the impact so brutal that even the WWE camera crew seemed shocked. But Bron didn't stop there. He stood over Paul, screaming at him, veins bulging, eyes wild with rage. And for maybe the first time in his WWE career, Paul Heyman had nothing to say. No clever words, no manipulation tactics, no calling for backup, just pure, unfiltered fear. Security rushed the ring, but let's be honest, what are they going to do to a man who just speared someone through an invisible wall? Bron left on his terms, standing at the top of the ramp, pointing at the broken body of Paul Heyman, sending a message that reverberated through the entire company. The old era? It's over, and anyone associated with it? You're next. Now, here's where this gets really interesting from a storytelling perspective. WWE has been teasing a Bloodline civil war for months. We've seen the cracks forming between Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. We've watched the Usos navigate their own complicated relationship with the family, and we've speculated about when The Rock might return to stake his claim. But Bron Breakker just threw a grenade into all those carefully laid plans. Because now, this isn't just about Bloodline internal politics. This is about an external threat that doesn't care about your family drama, doesn't respect your legacy, and isn't interested in waiting his turn. Bron Breakker is the ultimate disruptor, and Paul Heyman's beating was the announcement that a new force has entered the game. And Triple H, he's loving this. Think about it. The man who built NXT on the backs of intense, physical, no-nonsense wrestlers just watched one of his prized creations dismantle the face of sports entertainment's most successful faction. This is exactly the kind of unpredictability and edge that WWE has been missing. So where do we go from here? Because that's the million-dollar question that has everyone from casual fans to wrestling journalists scrambling for answers. Let's game this out with multiple scenarios, because WWE has just been handed the most explosive storyline opportunity they've had in years. Roman Reigns doesn't take kindly to anyone touching his wise man. Despite whatever internal conflict exists within the Bloodline, an attack on Paul Heyman is an attack on the entire family. We could see a scenario where Roman, Solo, and even the Usos put aside their differences to hunt down Bron Breakker. But here's the problem with that scenario. Bron Breakker doesn't back down. You saw his face. That wasn't fear of consequences. That was anticipation. He wants the fight. He wants Roman Reigns. He wants to prove that the tribal chief's reign was built on the backs of numerical superiority and not actual dominance. Never underestimate a wounded Paul Heyman. This is a man who survived decades in the cutthroat world of professional wrestling by being smarter, more cunning, and more ruthless than everyone else. He's been beaten down before, and he's always found a way to come back stronger. What if Paul Heyman uses this attack as the catalyst to recruit his own monster? What if he goes out and finds someone just as dangerous as Bron Breakker, someone with a grudge against the young superstar, and orchestrates a war that destroys them both? The possibilities are endless, and knowing Paul Heyman's creative genius, whatever he's planning will be diabolical. But here's the scenario that I think is most likely, and the one that has me most excited. This attack was just the opening salvo in WWE's next generation taking over. Think about who else is knocking on the main event door right now. Carmelo Hayes, Trick Williams, Roxanne Perez, Tiffany Stratton. All incredible talents who've been waiting for their moment to break through the ceiling that the established stars have been holding in place. What if Bron Breakker's attack on Paul Heyman was the signal flare? What if this is WWE's way of saying the transition is happening now and it's not going to be gentle? We could be witnessing the beginning of a full-scale invasion where the new generation doesn't just ask for their spot at the table, they flip the entire table over and rebuild it themselves. And the Bloodline? They're the symbolic representation of everything old-school WWE: faction warfare, lengthy promos, methodical storytelling. Bron Breakker represents the new WWE, athletic freaks who can go 100 miles per hour, create viral moments in seconds, and connect with the generation that wants intensity, authenticity, and violence. Now, I need to address the elephant in the room because I know some of you are thinking it. Was this too far? Should WWE have had a young wrestler physically assault a 59-year-old non-wrestler? And here's my take. Wrestling is supposed to make you uncomfortable. We've become so sanitized, so corporate approved, so worried about offending someone that we've forgotten what made wrestling great in the first place. The violence meant something. The attacks had consequences. When Stone Cold Steve Austin drove a beer truck to the ring and hosed down Mr. McMahon, people freaked out. When Brock Lesnar broke Hardcore Holly's neck, it changed how we viewed him. When Randy Orton punted Vince McMahon's head, it was shocking. These moments created stars. They created conversations. They made wrestling feel dangerous and unpredictable. Bron Breakker attacking Paul Heyman isn't too far. It's exactly as far as it needs to go to remind us that in this world, anyone can be a target and no one is safe. Paul Heyman has been a character in WWE storylines for years. He's been involved in physical angles, taken bumps, been put through tables. The idea that he's suddenly off limits because of his age is ridiculous. He's a performer, and this was a performance designed to elevate Bron Breakker to a new level of credibility. And judging by the nuclear reaction online, it worked. Some of you are furious that Bron would do this. Good. That means you're invested. You have an emotional reaction. That's what wrestling is supposed to do. Others of you are celebrating Bron as the future of WWE. Also good. That means you're excited about what comes next. The worst thing WWE could do is have no one care. And trust me, everyone is caring about this right now. So let me bring this home because we've covered a lot, and I want to make sure you understand the magnitude of what we just witnessed. Bron Breakker didn't just attack Paul Heyman, he declared war on the entire establishment. He looked at the most protected, most intelligent, most untouchable figure in WWE and said, "Not anymore." Paul Heyman is left broken, physically yes, but more importantly, strategically. His aura of invincibility is shattered. His ability to manipulate and control situations has been compromised. And every single person he's wronged over his 30-year career is watching this and thinking, finally. But Bron Breakker, he's just getting started. This is the beginning of his empire. This is the first chapter in a story that could define the next decade of WWE. He's young, he's talented, he's fearless, and he just proved that he's willing to do whatever it takes to reach the top of this industry. The Bloodline Civil War? That's cute. Bron Breakker just started a revolution. Roman Reigns should be worried. Seth Rollins should be worried. Cody Rhodes, Gunther, Drew McIntyre, everyone in that main event picture should be looking over their shoulder because a freight train with no brakes is heading straight for them. And the most beautiful part? We're all going to watch it happen. We're going to witness the rise of a generational talent who doesn't need years of development, doesn't need perfect booking, doesn't need the machine behind him. He just needs what he already has, raw talent and an unquenchable hunger for destruction. Paul Heyman taught the world that the most dangerous weapon in wrestling is the mind. Bron Breakker just proved that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is simply not caring about the consequences. The wise man has been schooled, the tribal chief has a new challenger, and the WWE Universe, we just got a gift. A superstar with unlimited potential, no ceiling, and absolutely zero fear. So here's what I need you to do right now. If you think Bron Breakker is the future of WWE and Paul Heyman got what was coming to him, smash that like button and let me know in the comments, Bron is the future. If you think Bron went too far and needs to be held accountable, I still want you to hit that like button, but comment, Bron crossed the line. Either way, we're having this conversation and I want to see where the Wrestle Scope community stands on this explosive situation. Subscribe to Wrestle Scope if you haven't already, because this is the kind of content we bring you. Deep dives into the most controversial, most talked about moments in wrestling. We don't do surface-level hot takes here. We analyze, we debate, we get to the truth. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when we break down the fallout from this, because trust me, this story is far from over. Bron Breakker just lit the fuse on the biggest bomb WWE has had in years, and we're going to be here covering every explosion. Share this video with every wrestling fan you know who's been sleeping on Bron Breakker. Share it with the people who think WWE has gotten too soft. Share it with anyone who loves when wrestling creates real moments that people will remember for years. This is Wrestle Scope, reminding you that in the world of professional wrestling, the only constant is change. And change just arrived in the form of a 26-year-old monster who left Paul Heyman broken and the entire WWE universe shook. I'll see you in the next video. Stay scoped in.